Hey friends, I'm going to read to you my blog written on August 10 of 2020, Cultural Appropriation, a Can of Worms or Just Tandoori Pizza. So I really love this subject matter. Cultural appropriation is everywhere. Tandoori Pizza is the perfect example. Anyway, I'm going to read this blog to you. I wrote it on September 21st, 2020, and I submitted this blog to Elephant Journal and also to Medium. Elephant Journal gave it an editor's pick, and it got selected for their magazine edit as well. Cultural appropriation, a can of worms or just tandoori pizza. This subject is a can of worms, and each of those worms are walking their own tightrope. Cultural appropriation or cultural misappropriation are the same thing. Basically, it's the adoption of one or more elements of a culture by members of another culture. We do it all the goddamn time. So when is it okay? And when do the worms fall off the tightrope? Cultural appropriation is not so great when there's a power dynamic at play, where members of a dominant culture cherry-pick particular elements from a culture that has been systematically oppressed by that dominant group. So, say you really like Chinese food, but you never want to set foot in China. Prob's not so great. Or, say you wear a sari to a fancy dress party, but you're not interested in understanding the life experience of the people of India. You just borrow an eye-catching number for a night of fun. Bow bow. Maybe also not so great. What if that night of fun is an Indian wedding that's actually really 4 nights of fun in 5 different saris? Maybe that's okay. What if you do yoga 3 times a week? Put on your latest activewear outfit, walk into a studio, roll out your carefully selected rubber rectangle, bend and stretch, sweat a little bit, and go home without the philosophical studies and history and appreciation of a life in yoga. Is just doing the asana, i.e. not engaging in all 8 limbs and living a life in yoga, is this cultural appropriation? Have you just cherry-picked what you liked about an ancient Indian practice and disregarded the rest? What if you're an Indian person in India making pasta in curry sauce? Yes, it's a thing, I've seen it. Tandoori pizza, anyone? These be grey overcast skies and muddy waters indeed, my friends. Questions. So, who owns a culture? Where and why did that culture originate? I mean really originate. What influenced that culture? Who polices any cultural infringements? Forget the worm analogy. Cultural appropriation is now a centipede, trying to walk a tightrope in 100 other people's shoes. We have cross-cultural mashups everywhere we look. These have been gifted to us by risk-taking explorers, adventurous yet weary travellers, immigrants and refugees who have had to flee their countries in the hope of establishing new lives somewhere safer. The sharing of culture and custom, even the recipes from our mother-in-laws of our interracial marriages. The internet has made it super easy for us to access and appropriate things we think are cool without even a second thought as to the history or origin of those things. Some have even been absconded under duress, and maybe we need to take a look at how and why that happened. Cultural boundaries are fluid and shifting. Culture is no one person's to preserve, and it's always evolving. Culture is what we make of it. And I believe there can be an authentic cultural exchange, harmony and understanding, and I deeply believe that starts with your intention. If we could get to a point where different cultures maintain the same level of respect and understanding without trivializing each of the other's history of its culture and customs, cultural appropriation may not be an issue at all. Unfortunately, this is not the world that we live in. Right now, we live in a world that asks us to pick a side, this camp or that camp, this or that, not this and that, not leaving us any room for questions, evolution or learning. What if we learn something new, change our position, or want to switch camps? Nuh-uh. Where's the line drawn? Where do we want to create? Do we want to create a global culture of separation and fear, which is making us small and withdrawn, and unable to ask questions and share our thoughts? The other day, a friend of mine was blocked from Instagram page as he commented on a post. Not negatively. He was literally opening a door for discussion. He was asking for more information. The door was slammed shut. He was blocked and no discussion was had. Now, I actually think that this is totally uncool. But was the account or owner too scared to enter the discussion? Honestly, I totally get that he or she may have been. The fierce, fast whip of words on social media can be super painful and bloody exhausting. I did a little experiment on my Instagram where I posted a picture of me in India next to a hand-carved image of Hanuman. I was holding the same shape as Hanuman in the carving. It's a joy-filled capture. Hanuman is representative of unconditional love, and that's so very much how I felt in that moment. 90% of the people that participated in the poll came back with a positive yes. It's absolutely cultural appropriation. I wondered though if they knew the backstory or the history or my personal relationship with India and the sentiment of the capture and the before and after events of when it was taken, would they feel the same way? It made me upset, to be honest, but I kept coming back to the thought, what was my intention? What is our connection to that exchange? What I was interested in was the number of people that just judged that snap without hesitation. As I mentioned, Hanuman's message is one of unconditional love. By not asking questions or wanting to learn more makes me think that this unconditional love story was kind of lost in their judgment. Instead of being like a loving Hanuman open-hearted monkey, they were just judgy-wudgy bears. For me, it's all part of a life in yoga. Compassion, understanding, sharing, learning, and letting go of judgment. And letting go of judgment can be super hard. It's not an easy task, and we have to keep coming back to that. I still love this capture, as I am sure that half a dozen Indian people are that asked me to take the very same photo of them in that moment. The issue that we're facing here is that there's no grey area to open a discussion, no possibility of creating a space for learning, growing and understanding and acceptance. The very things that break down the barriers to cultural appropriation are understanding and compassion, and these are just simply not being given the light of day. How can you know who is culturally appropriating what without context? I'm not trying to diminish anyone's cultural appropriation experiences here. What I am trying to do is create a space so that we can ask questions, share information for the betterment of our experiences. Understanding nuances, context, or someone else's perspective, and then having the ability to have what may well be challenging conversations to clear a path for cultural exchange is one of the answers. Dogmatic behaviour, social media bullying, blocking, judgment, and placing these such demands on others with your dogmatic beliefs saying that they need to choose one camp or the other is just to behave in the same way. It simply undermines the whole of everything. These are the core contributors to the problem. You call out, judge and belittle people on the internet and a big wave of shame rolls on in, and that's a conversation killer for sure. So where does that leave all of us in the West that have indeed rolled out a rubber rectangle to practice the art, science, and hopefully, eventually, the spirituality of yoga? It comes back to your intention. Like so many yogis in the West, I used to go to yoga class because that's what I thought it was. I thought that's what my truth was then. As I started to peel back the layers of what was going on in my physical body, the spiritual side of the practice began to reveal itself. It was like a truth upgrade. And I hungered for more. Eventually, the understanding that all of this was leading me to my meditation practice, which was the entire reason for my asana practice, or the entire reason that all of us practice asana, whether we know it or not. And again, a new layer of truth, or a new truth level. As a sharer of practice, I make it my mission to be learning every day. These are my daily truth adjustments. And I do my very best to embody the 8 limbs of yoga. But I'm only human, and so I fail all the time. What's different is that I acknowledge my failures and my challenges, and I just try again. This is not a wrong way to learn. However you get there is perfectly fine. It's your journey to go on. It's your journey to go on. I could go on a giant detour here of the origins of yoga. And if you do want to know, drop me a DM, comment below, and I will hold space for our discussion, our exchange, and our learning. So, big question. Who owns yoga? There are people in India who don't live a life in yoga. There are people who embody a life in yoga and share the practice of qigong in an ancient Chinese practice very similar to yoga. And what about comedic yoga? The yoga that's the ancient Egyptian practice. The very existence of these different cultures holding space for such similar practices that have evolved in their own way over time lends to the fact that we are all connected. Perhaps there was an ancient school of yoga, one that none of us knows about it. Maybe there were like 3 elders, and I'm just giving them human form here for like human form imaginary imagery here. What if these dudes were hanging out together in a cave and they were all like meditating, like going, yeah, I feel really good. You know, my consciousness left my body today. It's super awesome. I'm sitting in lotus pose. Another dude goes, yeah, I'm sitting on a rock. Feels really good. The other guy's going, yeah, I'm lying on my back. I had a super transportive meditation today. Total out of body experience, man. You know, maybe they're having a few scoobs. Not sure. And then maybe they were meditating together and then they just got bored of sitting in the cave together and went, I'm just going to go for a walk. And then on the lost horizon, they venture out and they go their separate ways. And they take with them whatever was working in their practice. And then because they're independent and they're going on their own adventures, their practice starts evolving in different ways. Yoga, as we know it, Yoga India, Qigong, and comedic yoga. Handing down, as they go along, their own systems and their shared knowledge and their experience through China, Egypt, and India. Evolving their own systems, languages, and signature moves along the way. Does it matter how we get to practice? Are we not all just seeking the same outcome? Yoga in Sanskrit means to yoke or join. In a more lateral translation, it means union. However you might find that union, it could be union to the self and the higher self. It could be your finger and your big toe if you're practicing Hatha yoga. It could be the yoga of force, and you spend your life gripping your toe to attain spiritual perfection and reach samadhi, divine or union with the divine, or oneness. Ultimately, it's what brings you balance, peace, happiness, love, and joy. Connection, appreciation of the experience of others, wholeness, eventually oneness. If we all found our own personal peace, would world peace not be attainable? Your truth in that moment, until you learn or unlearn something that creates your new truth. Your truth in that moment, until you learn or unlearn something that creates your new truth in the next moment. However the door is open to your spiritual practice is totally fine by me. Keep learning, keep digging deeper, leave that door wide open for learning and understanding and the exchange of information. Be supportive of others, ask questions, release judgment. If you're unsure, just keep some space for the evolution of your truth and the evolution of the truth of those around you. Come back to your intention. So, when I get addressed as Dear White Yoga Teacher in emails or social media messaging, and then given a serve about how someone else perceives my exploration of a life in yoga, quite honestly, that gross generalization offends me. Namaste, my yogi friends.